Connor. How you doing, beautiful?
Part 2. The Rampant Horse pub on the Longcroft estate was the pioneer pub that smelled of damp carpet and stale beer. Not many newcomers braved its doors, and that suited the regulars just fine. But tonight was different. Dan and Geordie, a ghost hunting team called Not a Cult, were sitting in the corner, not a cult, nursing pints and eyeing the cellar door nervously. At the bar, Ken, the resident grumpy barman, was polishing a glass with the sort of vigour normally reserved for political arguments and family feuds. Across the bar, Vinny sat scratching his scruffy dog Scraps behind the ears. Scraps, for his part, happily appreciated the attention. Next to Vinny sat Dave, a bloke with a sort of twinkle in his eye that said he could spin any old yarn for hours if there was a pint or two in it. He nudged Vinny, nodding at the ghost hunters. Look at them, Vinny, back here again. You'd think they'd have learned their lesson after last time when Ken gave us all a fright. You'd think they were eyeing up a bank job, not that drafty old cellar door. Vinny snorted. If they're after spirits, it's only the kind Ken is selling that'll do any harm. They're probably getting in the zone, you know, psyching themselves up. Ken says they'll be looking for ghosts in the cellar. Sorry, just correcting a typo on the hoof. Oops.
On the hoof. I love the term on the hoof.
On the hoof?
On the hoof.
Hang on.
My dad used to say
I
that.
messed myself up then, 1 second.
Hi, Jane. How are you, baby?
Right.
Hi,
Right.
Jane. Love you lots.
Ken looked up from his glass polish and giving them both a look sharp enough to cut steel. Don't you two start gossiping. Last thing I need is you two adding more fuel to this ghost nonsense. Folk are already nervous to come in here as it is. Nervous, Dave chuckled. I'm not surprised you're about as hospitable as Genghis Khan with a hangover. Vinny chipped in. You're the only business on the Longcroft estate with a minus score on TripAdvisor.
Right, hang on. Why are we in an estate?
What are we doing in a state of all places?
Yeah. What do you think about our stars?
You'll find out in a minute. Hey, I grew up on an estate. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, right, okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm a working class boy. I know my roots.
Going back to my roots.
And if you don't believe him, he'll catch you on the back of a job centre plus to
show you my roots. You can see my roots.
Jane,
here.
by the way, I'm only joking, Jane. I love you very much, Jane. It's all jokes and banter. Love you.
Not my problem, Ken muttered. If they're here to investigate ghosts, let them waste their time in the cellar. They paid me 50 quid, so they can do what they want. Only thing down there is mould and a colony of spiders.
Oh.
Just then, Dan and Geordie walked over, glancing at the cellar door. Dan, the one with the haircut that looked like he'd run headfirst into a blender, cleared his throat.
Okay, you fucking arsehole. Geordie, your eyebrows look black as fuck. Shut up.
Excuse me, he said, sounding as if he was trying his best to be brave. Is it all right that if we go down the cellar, you know, to investigate? Ken folded his arms. Help yourselves. I'll charge double if you're going to make a mess down there. Geordie gave him his winning smile. It'll be tidier than Dr. Crippin's waiting room. Legendary serial killer.
I'm good, Dan.
Vinny leaned in, eyebrows raised dramatically. I suspect it's already about as tidy as a teenager's bedroom. Ken doesn't do hygiene. Don't let him wind you up, lad. Dave leaned over. But do be careful down there, lads. Ken's heard noises from that cellar. Dave lowered his voice. Strange noises. There are things in heaven and earth we don't understand. Dan's eyes widened. Noises? Vinny shrugged. You'll be all right, lads. A couple of seasoned professionals like yourselves. Hey, Ken, whatever happened to that cellar boy of yours?
Cellar boy?
Cellar boy. Disappeared without a trace, shrugged Ken. Lecherous Lee, who'd been waiting at the bar, piped up. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder down there, I have. You'll get more than that if I catch you lurking in my bloody cellar, said Ken. Unperturbed, Lee sipped his pint. Friendly crowd, these ghosts. Nice change from some people. Hey, Ken. Ken rolled his eyes and turned back to his glass polishing, muttering something about bloody time wasters.
Oh.
Dan and Geordie grabbed their ghost hunting bags, looked at each other, took a deep breath, and then slowly opened the cellar door. They descended into the cellar with all the pomp and gravitas of explorers entering an ancient tomb. As the door creaked shut behind them, Vinny looked over to Dave, smirking. How long do you reckon till they come up screaming? Dave scratched his chin. Oh, 5 minutes maybe. If they make it past the rats, that is. Vinny chuckled, and Scraps let out a small, disinterested bark, as if to say he preferred Yvette Fielding. A few minutes later, a muffled shout echoed up the stairs, followed by a scuffling noise and the distinct sound of something clattering down the steps. The pub erupted in laughter as Dan burst out the cellar, looking as pale as Vinny when he realised it was his round. He was clutching his EMF reader, which was redlining furiously. The sound of a screeching REM pod could clearly be heard coming from the cellar. It was real! There's something down there, he gasped. Geordie emerged behind him, looking equally rattled. It touched me. My neck, like a hand, cold as ice.
My crap. My neck. Sorry. Yeah.
Dave smirked. Did it now? Cold hand, was it? Dan nodded. It's a ghost, I swear. Ken sighed and walked over to the cellar door. Ghost my arse. That'll be a draft coming in from the extractor fan. Always lets a chill in. But the EMF...
Hang on.
It doesn't like something, does it?
Who is that from? Me?
From you. Are you vapped?
I'll be all right, won't I?
The EMF reader was going crazy.
We've all got the restriction now, though.
But the EMF reader was going crazy, Geordie protested, holding it up for everyone to see. Didn't you hear that REM pod, said Dan. It was screeching like a teenager at her first One Direction concert.
I thought I was going to go in a different direction.
I did, to be fair.
Aye, and what did your spirit talker app say? Asked Vinny. Geordie looked down at his phone. You will all die in pain and suffering, he said, now white-faced. Lecherous Lee laughed. Obviously that ghost has tried Ken's homemade pork pies then. Ken shrugged, still unimpressed.
Actually, I think that ghost has tried Daniel's cottage soup, but continue.
That old cellar isn't haunted by anything more than bad wiring and horny spiders. If you want to go down again, be my guest. Just leave the theatrics out of it. You're giving my punters free entertainment. At that, Scraps stared at the cellar door and let out a low growl. Dan and Geordie exchanged a look of pure horror, shook their heads. Nah, we're good. We've seen all we need to see. We'll collate the data and get back to you, Dan said, edging towards the exit. Suit yourselves, Vinny chuckled, patting Scraps on the head. Don't think the ghosts would have minded the company. As the ghost hunters made a hasty exit, the pub settled down to the usual chat. Best entertainment we've had in ages, said Vinny. Dave raised his glass. To the Ghostbusters. Even Scraps barked in agreement. Ken poured another pint, muttering under his breath, bloody ghost hunters. But he was thinking about putting up a poster saying, Ghost hunters welcome, or come see our spirits. I mean, at 50 quid a pop, it was a nice earner. Down in the cellar, later that night, as Ken was changing a barrel and muttering to himself, he felt an icy cold hand touch his shoulder, and his blood ran cold as a ghostly voice whispered, Time, gentlemen, please. And that's it.
Oh, Dan, that was great.
Bit of fun. I thought you guys needed immortalising. Sorry for making you look like a pair of